Welcome to Embedded. I'm Alicia White, alongside Christopher White. This week, our guest, I'm so excited, is Jeri Ellsworth of CastAR.
Hello.
So before we start asking you a bunch of questions, I have a quick note that I have to do here. T-shirts are coming. Embedded FM t-shirts are coming with Sarah Petkus's awesome new Embedded FM logo. I will have an order link in the show notes. It will be a limited time order window, and we don't know when and if we'll do it again. So act quickly and push the button. And yes, despite any premature releases of, and yes, despite any links that might have gone up, I am going to get men's shirts as well as women's, and they will not all be black. Okay.
Hi, Jeri. Welcome to the show again.
Thanks for having me.
It has been a while since we talked to you. Could you introduce yourself as though you were on a panel?
Oh, my goodness. Where to begin? I'm kind of an interesting character. I'm a high school dropout. I got into auto racing in the 90s, had a chain of retail computer stores after that, back when the internet was getting hot and Windows 95 was the thing to have. And then when the computer stores fell apart, I took my hobby, which was electronics, and turned it into a career. So I started coming down here to Silicon Valley and meeting folks and showing folks projects, and eventually kind of busted into doing electrical engineering as a career without going to school. So some people know me for various things, whether it's the race cars, the computer stores, or some of my designs that I did. So, my electronics career, I did everything from, super high volume toy design to pretty high-end video compression ICs, stuff that ended up in these TiVo type boxes, and then eventually ended up at Valve Software as their first hire in their R&D department, which out of that came my current project, which is CastAR. Yeah.
And what is CastAR?
CastAR is a mixed reality headset. So it allows you to see holograms on your table, and you can directly interact with them. So our primary focus is entertainment and games. And so the technology allows you and your friends to sit around the table and see video game characters, and you can directly interact with them. So imagine games like God mode games where you can look down on top of little game characters. So, that's what we're doing.
Okay, we'll ask you a lot more questions about that. But before we do that, we have this segment where we ask you questions and want short answers. And if we are behaving properly, then we won't ask you why or how or all of the other questions. We'll see.
All right.
Chris?
I'm excited.
Oh, I'm going to go first? Okay.
You always go first.
I always go first?
Yeah.
I don't detect patterns in anything. Favorite pizza topping?
Pepperoni.
Favorite processor of all time?
Oh, I have to go back to the days of when memory was as fast as the internal logic, and it's the 6502. 0 page, a brilliant thing, tightly coupled to the memory, allowed to have really dense code.
Cool.
Least favorite electrical component?
The thyristor. It's just weird.
I forgot what those are.
PHY, I think.
Thyristor.
Yeah, yeah. So it's used to switch alternating current. It's much like a bipolar transistor, but only works on alternating current or pulsating signals.
Most favorite electrical component?
The MOSFET, because I try to build them in my garage, and I'm just in love with trying to do that.
Well, I think after that, this one's going to be an easy one. Would you rather explain the static keyword in C in its many forms, or the difference between NPN and PNP transistors?
Oh, that's easy. I'm frustrated with programming. It takes too long. I'd rather just solder a wire. So definitely transistor. holes, electrons, depletion layers. Totally geek out on that.
Favorite engine of all time?
Like automotive engine?
Yes.
Small block Chevy, for sure. They made it for about 40 or 50 years. They're still probably making it. Lots of add-on parts for it. And when you're into racing, it's one of the lightest V8 engines out there. It doesn't have much iron in it compared to like the Chrysler Y blocks and those other ones that just weigh hundreds of extra pounds.
I feel like we could have a whole show about that.
Probably.
Chris, you have...
I have lots of opinions. Not all good ones.
Favorite fictional computer? And I tried this last week and it didn't work. So if you don't have an answer, that's fine.
HAL.
There we go.
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing with the Amazon Echo, and I love asking it to open the pod bay doors and the funny responses. So that's kind of on the front of my mind right now.
Favorite pinball machine?
I mean, that's like asking if
you can't ask that.
Have a favorite kid or something. It's tough.
Don't let the other pinball machines hear.
Okay. Well, Black Knight 2000. They may have heard. I think they're looking at me kind of angrily. They're across the room.
I have one more. Chris, do you have any more?
Nope.
Preferred type of flux?
Oh, this one's easy. So CastAR, high solids. My circuit boards look like a tree, like busted open and sap poured all over them, when I'm done. And it's great. It has a long work time. It's sticky, so your surface mount parts stick down. And I'm definitely not into the no clean stuff because it just evaporates too quick and you get cold solder joints too easy.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot about fluxes through that question. Okay.
I'll take on anyone that says anything but high solids flux. It'll be like 2 nerds enter, 1 leave, and it'll be me.
So in more detail, what is a work day like for you?
For me, I usually get up around 9:30 or 10 and then cruise down the hill. I'm in San Jose and I work in Palo Alto. So I try to avoid all the traffic. So I try to hit the road by 10 and then get to the office by 11. And then since I'm an executive in the company, most of my days, spent in BS, business meetings. See, I'm trying not to drop the F-bombs and like I warned you about. So yeah, most of my day, like the regular business day is just like meetings and go-to-market plans and next funding rounds and stuff like that. And then, all the suits and stuff go home around 6 o'clock. And then that's when the engineering starts. So really our core crew, we really get most of our work done between 6 and 8. And then I head home and I usually work until like 1 or 2 in the morning because I really love the engineering aspect. I don't like the business side.
I was going to ask you, does being president of the company interfere with your ability to get engineering done? It sounds like that's a resounding yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the biggest surprises starting the company. Like, I've run businesses before, but not at this scale. So you end up, just so much time like trying to inject your vision into all these business meetings. And if you're not there, then all of a sudden you come back a few days later and it's like the whole company's pivoted to do something crazy.
Oh, that word, pivoted. That's really different than when you made the Commodore 64 system on a chip joystick that you're pretty well known for, the mini games in a single controller. And that was like 2004, 2005-ish?
Yeah. I mean, it was a much simpler project in some ways, but what was different is it was manageable enough that I could just call a lot of the shots. And then there was a really, big, clear divide. I was doing all the electronics and the software folks were doing all the software, and it was really clear. So the difference with the company now is like the landscape is just continually changing. Like we did our Kickstarter for this, gosh, was it almost 3 years ago? I think it was I think I was in the middle of the Kickstarter campaign when I came on your podcast last time.
Yes. In fact, you were doing the whirlwind tour of Silicon Valley, talking about the Kickstarter.
Oh my God, that was crazy. I almost ended up with pneumonia in the middle of that because it was so stressful and so much sleepless nights and working and jet setting around.
I admit that when you came over to record, I didn't so much want to record as feed you. You looked tired and just like you'd been doing this a lot.
Yeah, it was funny. The Kickstarter, it started off with a month before we did the video, which was pretty stressful. So we had to try to make tons of business decisions, then get the video made. So that was stressful. And then prior to that, we were doing a bit of a tour just to get the hype going to see if we actually had a viable product. And so that was stressful. But going into the Kickstarter, it was crazy because I think the first week at least, there was about 2 interviews a day, and it slowed down a little in the middle and then picked up in the end when we started reaching $1 million bucks. Then a lot of other folks wanted to talk to us.
You did have a very successful Kickstarter funding round.
Mm-hmm.
And you reached well over your goal.
Yeah, that was pretty exciting. It was a nice, proof that we were on to something.
But then things went a little wrong with Kickstarter.
Yeah, it did. It's not the only thing that went wrong, for sure. It's interesting. Rick and I had this big lofty plan, okay, we're going to do our Kickstarter. We're going to make, a big, bold plan. And then we're going to go raise, more money, because almost anything like this, you have to raise more money. The Kickstarter, the VCs these days just look at Kickstarter as like a validation that you're onto something. But I think our missteps were we underestimated the amount of time it would take to raise that next round of funding and the business side of it. For Rick and I, we quickly got sucked into 14-hour days of trying to hire people to work with engineers, and then we were out hitting the road talking to VCs. But then another misstep is we were in Woodinville, Washington, which was in the middle of nowhere. And when fundraising was kind of going slow because we were in Washington and not Silicon Valley, and we couldn't hire people because we were in Woodinville, not Silicon Valley, it just derailed the entire project. Eventually, we wised up, and partway through that, we hired a professional CEO, which was great because, the first thing that he did was okay, you guys got to get out of Washington. You got to get to Silicon Valley. And as soon as we did that, things started getting back on track.
But then you refunded out all of our dollars.
I know, that was, I'm actually very proud of that. So we, to give some, backstory on that. So we promised to start delivering stuff within the first year, and we didn't do that. We started delivering stuff a year and a half into it, which was some of the earliest Kickstarter glasses. And then we raised a bunch of money through Playground Global, which is Andy Rubin's venture fund. And so after all this time had elapsed, the market had shifted, VR had sucked the wind out of a lot of the stuff that we were doing. And so we're like, do we still want to make a PC peripheral with all of these weird SKUs associated with it now that we're behind? And all we're doing is pissing off the Kickstarter people because we're just behind. And there's, what we really need to do, here's your favorite word, pivot into doing what the end consumer really wants, which is a self-contained unit, not a PC peripheral. And so, internally we went back and forth oh my God, if we just make everyone wait and then we ship them out the self-contained, let me back up. Instead of a PC peripheral, the new units are going to have all their processing on board so they can play the games out of the box. So that's an important distinction, right? In a quite a bit different development cycle for us. And so, now getting back onto why we decided to do the refund is we sat in these endless meetings discussing like how to deal with the Kickstarter backers, since they were the first there to, love us and support us. It was funny is some of the, purely money-focused people, when we start talking about refund, they're like, just give them a refund. They should be happy with that. And Rick, no, Rick and I are like, no, that sounds like something that's going to backfire really badly.
Yes, sci-fi. It's backfired. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So, we went to Andy Rubin and our friends at Playground. Here's the scenarios we could go through. We could give back the money and potentially piss off everyone because we just borrowed their money and they get nothing out of it, or we can make them wait and piss them off, and then they'll get a product that's different than what they ordered, or we can give them back the money and give them free glasses. And it was really a no-brainer. When we looked at the figures, it was like, I don't know what the number exactly was, but it was like $1.5 million to do this whole campaign to give back the money and give them glasses. And it's like, geez, that's going to be some of the cheapest marketing dollars we'll ever spend. When we actually go mass market, we're talking about much bigger spends on marketing. It's better to have all the Kickstarter people happy and really thank them for getting us through those rough patches, and getting us down here to Silicon Valley so we can raise real, money so we can do it right.
I'm curious how you feel about Kickstarter in hindsight now, because it does sound like it was invaluable in getting you to this point. But on the other hand, it didn't quite work the way you wanted it to. Would you go back and do, in 10 years, another Kickstarter project?
I would never do Kickstarter on this kind of scale again.
Okay.
So I would only do Kickstarter if everything was fully developed and like it was pretty much at the stage where, it's like dumping gasoline on a fire. It's like the design is in the can and all I have to do is pull the trigger and the units will start coming off of the factory production line. Anything else is too risky because you're going to get sucked into all these things I talked about. It's like, we had some disasters just trying to get the first set of glasses out where one of our vendors just got acquired and they no longer wanted to sell us parts. So, now we're retooling and, trying to like make something else work, and it adds like 4 months to the project, and, or you can't hire folks fast enough. And so you're trying to do it yourself, but you should be out there doing fundraising. And it's just a bad situation.
Well, and hiring is a giant time suck too. You're not doing engineering; you're talking to people all day.
Yeah. I've got stories around hiring. I'm actually very surprised at the state of engineers these days. Like it's interesting. It's like there's a lot of folks out there that don't know their fundamentals anymore because it's become such a plug and play world where you can take a bunch of reference designs and kind of squish them together and make pretty complicated systems. But when something goes wrong, when you're plugging all this stuff together, they kind of fall flat and they don't know how to debug it because the underlying fundamentals aren't there.
Or even make it low power or miniaturize it. I mean,
yeah,
you make it work, but it's going to be 10 pounds. Or
Exactly. And back to the Kickstarter thing, it's like, I think Kickstarter is awesome. And I think, at the time, I think VCs are getting smarter about it. I'm spending all this time working at Playground and talking to those guys. Kickstarter back then was new. And so the VCs were really leaning towards people to do Kickstarters on these, difficult, engineering companies. And now I think they're wising up that, it's not a great indicator.
It's not a great indicator. And you have to build what you said, even if you find out halfway through that wasn't the right thing, which is largely what happened to you. You said you were going to build a PC peripheral, sort of like the Vive and the Oculus that are out, where you have a big computer and you are tethered to the computer, and maybe you get to walk around, maybe, but you're still tethered to the computer. And so you're going to build something self-contained, not tethered to the computer.
Exactly. And that's how you hit, tens of millions of homes. It's got to be, pull it out of the box, hit the power button, and go. Like that, it has to be that easy to be mass market. So that's where the Vive and all these other ones, are going to struggle. It's like, it's hard to imagine, like most homes in the world, clearing out their living room and buying, $1,500 computer.
Sorry, that was exactly what happened.
Wait, do you have a Vive?
Yeah, Chris got a Vive about a month ago, and he let me play with it for a minute, and I said,
clear out the living room and build a $1,500 computer.
Yes, it was exactly that.
I mean, don't get me wrong. That's my old team that, we were doing that at Valve, and I absolutely think it's amazing. They've done an amazing job, but you're never going to be mass market that way. And, Rick and I knew that going into Kickstarter. We're like, what we really want to be self-contained, but since we're doing Kickstarter, we've got to do this kind of minimalistic thing, which is a PC peripheral, which don't get me started, like the whole, like trying to make something work on a PC. What a nightmare. Holy smokes. I'll never do that again. It's terrible.
Yeah, you have no control, right? I mean, it's like, we don't know what GPU they're using. We don't know what CPU they're using. So you have to give recommended numbers, and
nobody likes the recommended numbers.
And then Microsoft comes along and releases some new DirectX and something. Oh, God, I can't imagine.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. It's like Windows 10 does like this transparent windowing thing, and it adds an extra frame of latency, which just totally destroys our system. You can't have that. So then you have to like bend over backwards and target specific video cards, and you got to have backing of like Facebook or Valve to actually write drivers to target that hardware. But if it's self-contained, well, you have a target that's not moving, so it becomes a lot easier to make a good user experience. It's like, Rick and I sit around, we talk about what Christmas Day is going to look like in 2017 when kids get our product. And it's, we don't want kids. I mean, we talked about maybe we hook it to phones, or maybe we still support hooking it to PCs. And every time we go through that thought exercise, it's like, it's just a recipe for disappointment for folks. It's like, you get it home and you try to hook it to your 486 DX 60. It doesn't work. You're just disappointed. So, no, it's been a good thing. The Kickstarter and the response from the Kickstarter refund has been amazing. Like I was really, really proud of how we handled it, and the backers in general were really, really happy and thought it was a classy move. And so, I mean, the anxiety the day that we hit the button to say the refund was coming, it's like I couldn't sleep, because it's just like, am I going to get crucified, or is it going to turn out neutral, or is it going to be good?
Well, and it's so easy now with so many horror stories on Kickstarter for that to become a big press, debacle, and somebody decide, we're going to make an example of this company. So navigating that carefully was probably very, very difficult and anxiety producing. Yeah.
We tried to be really sensitive to our partners too. Like Kickstarter was awesome to us when we kicked off our campaign. And so, we made sure that we let them know ahead of time, just in case they wanted to like have any kind of damage control if it did go south, because I mean, even Kickstarter's under a lot of,
scrutiny.
Yeah. Just because it's out of their control. So we wanted to try to be, nice and let them have some control for a change.
So self-contained, I'm still stuck on this. Because if I think about wearing the computer necessary to drive the Vive system on my head, it immediately gives me a headache. I mean, the Vive system alone is pretty heavy. And you add a nice GPU into that, which I imagine you'll need, and you add a processor, and then the ginormous power system and cooling system. And
I suspect they're doing something different.
How? What can you tell us about what you are doing different that you won't need a large, powerful, expensive computer sitting on your head?
So what we're doing to prevent you from having to wear a whole like PC on your head that's would look kind of weird and probably too heavy is we have a little game console box that clips to your belt and it has a wire that runs up to the headset. That way we can remove anything that'll generate heat or be heavy, away from your head. And we're doing a lot of other tricks too. So we're using some of my ASIC FPGA mumbo jumbo magic to do feature detection in the world, so the actual SoC itself doesn't have to process gigabytes of data just to do the image processing. That's where the other guys are not being very well. Maybe they're being smart because they have a PC there and they can actually just brute force this stuff. But we're reducing gigabytes per second of data down to just megabytes of data. So the SoC, the tablet class processor, doesn't have to actually do all that work.
So you're doing the motion tracking with cameras?
Yep.
Okay.
It's camera based, similar to our original system.
Okay.
Gyros and cameras and stuff. We're adding new features, but we're not going to be announcing those, quite yet. But the majority of the little game console box it's all battery because we're shooting for a long gameplay session, and so these tablet processors, when you run them full tilt to do graphics at that rate, they're 5 or 6 watts. So it's quite a challenge.
That would get hot too.
Yeah, so you need a little surface area to dissipate that heat.
But those processors are actually pretty capable now. If you think of high-end tablets, they're driving really high-density displays, and playing pretty appreciably good games on them. So it doesn't seem like a huge impossible task.
Yeah, there's tablets out there that have far more resolution than what we require. So, we're in good shape. So we actually have a lot of that stuff up and running on the bench, and it'll be exciting when we actually get to start showing that, which will, probably be later in the year or beginning of next year once we start trying to get the next hype cycle going. To sell the actual units. It's kind of interesting that, as we're going through all these different phases of the company where, the amount of money on engineering starts looking small compared to things like marketing. It kind of makes my skin crawl.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And many of your past projects have been, I don't want to say word of mouth because I'm sure there was marketing, but it wasn't like that. You probably didn't drop $1 million of advertising before you got started.
Yeah, this is different. Like we're trying to get into like a big market penetration into, homes across, well, maybe I shouldn't go into all that, but across some regions. Oh, that brings up a topic. I really, some of our folks their skin would be crawling themselves, like hearing all the stuff I'm talking about, because whenever I have to go do public speaking, it's like my hands are constantly tied now. And that's one of the things that was really disappointing about the Kickstarter campaign for me. Like Rick and I thought we could go into this probably naively, that we could be, totally open and talking about what was going on, and it would be okay. We quickly realized that was a really, really bad idea. Like there was a situation where we had a delay to one of our early Kickstarter backer glasses, and we were convinced it was this chip that was causing us the problem. And if we would have went on Twitter and said like, this company made this chip and it doesn't work as expected, and it turned out it wasn't that chip, it was a software bug, we had just, potentially like pissed off one of our partners. It's just different when you're trying to make a mass market device. You got to be a lot more careful about what you say.
And more people are watching you now. So when you say something, you're saying it to a larger audience. So eating crow is worse.
Yeah. I mean, that would have been a really, really bad situation, because we were totally convinced. I sometimes don't have a filter and go to Twitter and trash on things. I was about ready to do it.
Oh.
Don't worry. Nobody listens to podcasts.
Okay.
That's not what I told her when I asked her on the show.
Oh, oops, sorry.
Oh. You have a good viewership.
We do. And our listeners are pretty engaged, which has been really great.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the reasons I did ask you on the show is because you are hiring. I mean, you're hiring a lot.
Yeah, our team has grown a lot since we moved down here. And we're now well funded, and we're trying to build out the team, which has been a challenge. It's like I was talking about earlier. It's like there's really good talent out there, but you've got to kiss a lot of frogs to find your princes and princesses, and so that's pretty tedious. Even here in Silicon Valley.
What are you hiring for?
Oh, well, we're looking for mostly production type folks that have been through the production cycle once or twice. Really in desperate need of a firmware person right now, because we have firmware hanging out all over our device, whether it's our wand controller and our headset, and our the personnel we have now are stretched pretty thin. That would be great. We're looking for another program manager. So someone familiar with manufacturing can run some of these programs. And then on the software side, we're looking for folks anywhere from, we have a small game studio now, so we're looking for games folks. So there's a wide variety of folks that work in that group, like artists and level designers and various games people that I probably don't even know. And then we have our system aspects. So there's a lot of system software, and those guys are kind of stretched a little thin. So, Android experience, low level, clear down to the metal type experience, drivers.
And I think I saw hardware and mechanical engineering on your list too.
Yeah, if we could find another really hardcore electrical engineer that's been through the production cycle before, that'd be awesome. I mean, I tend to let everyone down because they're looking to me to do some of this EE work, and then I get sucked into some BS go-to-market meeting. Sorry if any of our marketing people are listening. But I don't get all the work done that I should, so I keep finding myself being the critical path.
We'll pretend that BS stands for Business Supreme.
Yeah. We love you.
Okay, so I have been wanting to talk to someone about hiring process and what is it like for you? We have a fairly large segment of our audience are college students who are just trying to figure out engineering as a whole. And so they probably wouldn't be who you're trying to hire, but could you talk to them about what do you do? I mean, you submit a resume. Do you include a cover letter? What kind of interview questions do you ask?
I think it's different for everywhere that you go. But for us, things that are important is that you have some relevant work, some prior history. Even if you're like a student or maybe getting started, that, on your resume, you talk about projects that you've done. Because, when you're coming out of school, you're not a good engineer until you get a couple bloody noses and you kind of mess up a few times. And so
I must be a really good engineer.
No, the more bloody noses you get out there, the better you are as an engineer, usually.
Sorry.
The other thing that we look for is someone that can collaborate. So, when you come interview for us, you go through, you meet, most of the hardware team. Like if you're interviewing for hardware, and you do whiteboarding sessions on every single session. And what I look for, and a lot of our folks look for, is like, we're going to throw some curveballs at you, but what we really want to hear is don't try to bullshit us. Like if you don't know something, say like, gosh, I've never experienced that before. Can you help, walk me through that? And what we're looking is see if we can do a collaboration, because I shouldn't give away our interview questions, but it may be, they're not trick questions. They're not like puzzles. They're real design problems, but they're tricky because it forces you to think about what the customer wants, and You have to think about your bill of materials, how much each part that you're selecting that's going into the design, and manufacturability. And so those are all the things that we're kind of throwing at you to do a work problem on the whiteboard. Some of the candidates that I've ran into that I have the biggest allergic reactions to, we kind of call the filibuster folks. If they get up there and they try to waste time in the interview talking about stuff they did in the past and are resistant to get to the whiteboard, it's almost an immediate no hire when I start seeing that kind of, stalling to get to the whiteboard.
Yeah, I remember that kind of behavior now that you mentioned that. And
yeah, it's amazing in the Valley here. There are people that go from company to company that don't have any of the fundamentals, but they're really good at talking the talk and throwing out the buzzwords. And if they can get past all the whiteboard work sessions, they can get hired, and then they can kind of fly under the radar for a year or two before they get found out, and then they move to the next position. For us, we look, when we pre-screen folks, we often look at their work history, and it's like if we see like 6 months here, 1 month there, a year here, like really short durations, we start to, really poke to see if they're one of these filibustering people.
Well, and it's tough. I used to have people who really did not want to program, didn't want to write code in an interview. And as a senior engineer, I sort of understand, writing code is sort of just a tiny part of what I do. That's not the most useful question. But on the other hand, wow, there are a lot of people who really can't write code, and I need to know before I start paying them.
Yeah, exactly. I think, when I've sat through hundreds of interviews at Valve Software, putting that team together, and many here, and maybe not hundreds, but it's very rare for a candidate to come through and get the problem right on the whiteboard that has tons of like problems in it. I think as a young engineer coming into the field, they should just be ready to accept and be humble when they go in and understand it's going to have tons of problems. And most of us on the other side aren't looking for perfection. We're looking for someone that we think that we could actually work with. And when there's a problem, we can collaborate. It's another allergic reaction I have is when a candidate, like, instead of just accepting their problem that they may have in their design, they start getting defensive. It's like, that'll be like an immediate no hire for me if they get defensive, because that just shows that I won't be able to work with them when there is that problem, when we're sitting around the table after they get hired.
I once, after I was offered a job, but I wasn't really sure I should take it, I made an appointment to have a talk with my future manager, and then I disagreed with everything he said. Like, I was annoying. Just to find out what would happen when he disagreed with me.
Oh, see if he like lashes out at you or something? Yes.
Was this well, I'm not going to hire you, you're too much of a jerk? Or was it well, let's find out what's wrong. What's behind the problem here? And it was, I think, educational for both of us and useful to have done. And I did come clean and say, these are the things that I really don't care about that we argued about, and these are the things I actually do care about. And so we should clear this conversation from our cache.
That's actually kind of a good point. Like, if I were interviewing, I think I would be looking at the people in the room. If they're condescending to me or mean in any way, I probably would, second guess working there. Like, I interviewed at a big fruit company.
I was just going to say. Go ahead.
Yeah. And they were condescending to me. I was kind of fucking up in the interview, but they were asking me questions out of my domain. And it's just like, so as soon as they realized that they'd put me into the wrong interview, they brought in some other folks, to interview me in digital design instead of hardcore analog design. And they were going to offer me a job. And I was like, forget it. I don't want to work here.
But interviewing is scary. So it's hard not to get defensive. It's hard not to feel like they're attacking you when what they're doing is setting up a difficult problem. They want to see how you work.
Exactly.
It's a tough situation, especially when you only have an hour to get to know somebody and to find out if you're going to work with them for the next 5 years.
Well, sometimes people are trying to find out how you work. And I like what you're saying about practical problems and talking about the implications of part choice and all that. That's things I've never been asked in interviews. So I would love that. But I've been in interviews where it's like, okay, here's this goat in a river, and or here's this completely inscrutable bit twiddling problem. What does it do? What does this code do? It's like, oh, why?
Exactly.
You can't learn anything about how I think from this because I can't explain what's going. Yeah. So I'm heartened to hear that practical questions exist.
Yeah. I mean, I think the advice, if you're like a manager and you're looking to hire people onto your team, make sure that every single one of the interviews is technical. Don't allow any of the interviews just to be chit-chatty, because those are super, when I say chit-chatty, like we've had folks that were tempted to just sit there and ask them about their prior history. And of course, they're going to be able to, make it sound like they're amazing. But if they're not getting up to the whiteboard, you're never going to know. And don't ask those stupid, puzzle questions. I mean, they just scare the candidate, and they really don't reveal a lot.
Well, and experienced people often are very annoyed by those because we know what you're doing and it's annoying and it's not going to get you what you want and all that. Do you ask mostly the same questions from interview to interview? I always found that to be really useful. Yeah.
So every candidate gets the same question from me. Unless they're in a different domain. And so we have a digital design, we have a firmware, we have an analog design question, but they're all kind of the same. And I encourage each of our teams to have their questions, and we review them ahead of time and make sure that everyone going in knows what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And we're getting better as a company hiring, because you start to calibrate, you start to see trends of how people are failing or succeeding, and you can refine that question. I guess once we get bigger, and we start hiring hundreds of people and Glassdoor starts putting our questions up there, we'll have to make different variants of it. But
a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
That's a future problem. Yeah.
It's fun. I love our team. We put together a really awesome team. We work really hard. It's the startup life and dream. We're looking for that when we're talking to folks. It's like, are you ready for this? Because you're going to come into an environment where, here's your favorite word again, we may have to pivot a couple times as we figure out where we're going. And there's going to be some really times, and there's going to be some really great times. And in the end, it's about making this amazing product.
Okay, so if you have sold your hiring or your open positions to someone listening, they should go to CastAR/jobs.
I think on the main page there's a join us or something. It should be easy enough to find.
Okay. And the jobs are in Palo Alto, Silicon Valley, California.
Yeah, we're not big enough to support remote workers necessarily, unless they're just absolutely amazing.
It's tough. It's different. I mean, I do mostly remote work now, and I like it because I'm on my own and relatively self-directed. But starting a company that small, it can be tough unless it's part of your corporate culture.
It takes a different discipline on both sides. I spent most of my career working remotely. So I was talking about coming down here to Silicon Valley and finding my first jobs. I was living in Portland. And I would cruise on down here and meet people and land these jobs. And the first couple that I did were okay, but I learned a lot about when to over communicate and when to, keep it brief. It kind of depends on the personality of your manager on the other side, whether, they give you complete faith that you'll just get done, or if you need to over communicate. So that's some of the first things I always try to figure out early on, starting the job.
Well, that's even true of not remote. I mean, sometimes people who are on site get lost in the shuffle.
And sometimes it's just not workable, Sometimes I didn't have the skills to meet the expectations of my boss at the other end. And so it was just unworkable. And sometimes it worked out great. So, if you try it and it doesn't work out, maybe don't get discouraged. It might have been the other side as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is going down a depressing path. Let's try something else. For CastAR, what is your killer app?
Oh, it's definitely entertainment. We're really focused on social gaming. What's magical about our system is when you start getting 2 or 3 of your friends around the table and you start playing these kind of God mode games. And, let me set up a scenario for you. Just imagine we're all sitting around the table together and, we're playing an RTS and I go off and I attack your village and I, form an alliance. So I look across the table to Alicia and then we go off and attack, someone else's village for a while. And then, the alliances can shift and it's that closeness. It's like sitting around a campfire and sharing this entertainment experience. It's super magical. And the more people you can add around the experience, the more addicting it gets. And we're also trying to bridge that over larger distances. So our system has Wi-Fi and all the normal connectivity stuff to it. But we're adding some features to it to allow you to have a more intimate connection like that. So, if we're playing across the world and, I have a hologram standing on the table, you would see that same hologram on your side and we'll be able to directly communicate with each other over voice chat. And so we're trying to mimic the social experiences with, network play. This kind of experience, this kind of around the campfire type experience is not really present on any of the other video game systems. And so we think that's really special about our system.
Okay,
I don't know if that made sense. I kind of rambled a little bit, but...
No, but going like way back to the beginning, RTS is a real-time strategy, which when you say that, I think of things like Risk. But you probably have things that are more fun than Risk.
Or like Warcraft.
Yeah, things like that. Okay. Our system works really well for top-down kind of God mode stuff. Like a Mario Kart would be amazing, where we're all sitting around the table and you have little race cars cruising around the table, or World of Warcraft, or any kind of third-person top-down type game. Well, then, but it's such a direct interaction, so you can just reach right into the experience and directly point to where you want your character to go. That's also another thing that's just really never seen on any other type of gaming system. I mean, VR is doing some of it, but it's inherently antisocial, so you don't get this kind of communal type experience.
That's partially because it's augmented reality, because you can see the room as well as what the glasses are overlaying, the augmented part of the reality.
And you're in the room with your friends.
And you're in the room with your friends, or you're in the room maybe not with your friends, but with somebody else who is a friend but far away.
Exactly. So like if we're far away from each other, when I take my wand controller and I put it into the virtual space, you see it show up on your side, which is...
Oh, that's cool.
It's very direct.
One of the things from using the Vive for a few weeks, the impression I got is nobody's quite figured out what to do with it yet.
Are you kidding? Audio Shield is the best thing ever.
There's lots of fun little games, and there's some fun bigger games, but the games, they're all trying different things, and nobody seems to have...
They've all got different interfaces.
They've all got different interfaces. I mean, There is a killer app out there, but I don't think anybody's settled on it yet. And I think what's going to emerge from it is maybe not what everybody's expecting. And I expect you guys are open to that too. It's like, okay, here's what we think is going to happen, but if something else pops up that's compelling, we're gonna go with that too.
We're gonna pivot.
Yeah, right. I didn't want to say that.
Hey, I'm gonna abuse the hell out of it. I've been watching Silicon Valley, so it's so close to home. Anyway, yeah, it's true. I'm looking at the whole like evolution. So when we were at Valve and we started researching mixed reality, AR, and virtual reality, everyone thought first-person shooters were going to be the killer thing on these VR headsets. It turns out it makes everyone throw up and get really sick. And so after we left Valve and we started doing the mixed reality stuff, we started to see this trend of all the VR stuff, moving away from first-person shooters where you're running through an environment to more of a localized, like room scale type experience. That's the magic of the Vibe system. Is it's kind of like these. Most of the compelling experiences are like the Connect, Dance Central, or whatever it's called, where a bunch of you get together, you have fun, like thrashing your hands around, and you're running around in the living room, doing tilt brush. But the problem is they're just like the Connect games and Guitar Hero and some of these niche-y things, is they don't really have the sticking power. So like, our Vive, I use it like once every 3 weeks and I try and experience. I'm like, haha, it's fun. And I play it for 15 minutes and then I put it on the shelf and it sits there for 2 or 3 weeks until the next experience comes along. Like what we're trying to put together is a system that gets people coming back every day. It's approachable. You don't have to clear out your furniture. It has, familiar game content that's, has long play aspects to it. Like RTSs have long session times.
And something where people don't necessarily have to learn how to interact with something in a new way. It's virtual, but it's interacting in the same way you're used to with a tabletop game.
And so I'm predicting that the virtual reality is just the tip of the iceberg. Really, when we project out 5 to 10 years, it's mixed reality. There's really cool technology out there, like these auto stereo displays that within 10 years, for sure, you're going to be able to walk into your home. It's going to track your face position, and it's going to know who you are. You're going to be able to say, "Hey, CastAR, show me the weather in Silicon Valley," and you'll see a holographic version of the valley and the weather, system floating through it. Or you could sit around the table and play games and have multiple viewers into these holographic displays, and they'll be eyewear free, but they're going to be that easy to approach, easier than even tablets are today, because they're just going to be there and present in your environment all the time.
That sounds amazing.
I mean, we have a long ways to go. I mean, CastAR, we're just looking at what's the most viable mixed reality platform we can, ship out today. And really, it's the projected type mixed reality. I mean, we want to have a price point that's just an impulse buy, so everyone can get these headsets and they can use them. But where are we in 10 years? We're probably, a lot of our experiences are going to be eyewear free. If we get on the bus, we might put our near eye type display, and we do our computing in our eyewear when we're out and about, but not when we're in the home. So we want to make sure that we're ready for that when the time comes. And so a lot of our focus is around our platform, not necessarily the making the ultimate in fidelity for the glasses. Or I think that's another thing where the VR guys kind of painted themselves into a corner. Like they just kept pushing so hard for more pixels and more, fidelity. And so now the expectations for the games are, it's got to be AAA game title type experiences, and they lost track of like the social fun aspect of it.
Yeah, most of the most fun things on there so far are not AAA. They're very simple and cartoony graphics and things. And
exactly. And we're going through a phase right now. I'm seeing it. I already see all the chatter out there. This is something I was trying to warn Valve about early on, is that if you go down this path, there's going to be an expectation of the quality of the games that you're not going to be able to achieve. So, if you keep pushing down the path of like, we're making a headset for AAA games, and then folks get the headset and they pay $40 for the office simulator, and it's just an office simulator that you want to play for 15 minutes, they're going to feel disappointed. And then there's going to be this bad cycle of this disappointment.
But you are focusing on board games and community shared things. Boy, I didn't really get that right, did I? I got the board games part okay. And you have been saying mixed reality. And I was saying augmented reality. What's the difference between augmented reality and mixed reality?
No, it's just another acronym that, we moved to using mixed reality because we want to start bringing physical objects into the experience. So playing cards and little toy figures and stuff like that. So we want to mix real world objects with augmented things. Like I put my toy dragon down, plastic toy dragon, it shoots fire at your village. We want to create those moments of delight and direct gameplay and mix them right in the middle of games. Augmented reality has been around for a long time and it's very confusing. So anyway, that's the reason we're pivoting towards mixed reality.
Are you going to be Cast MR soon? Mr. Cast?
I know, because maybe it doesn't go well with our name.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
AR has, or mixed reality, has more ability to integrate into the real world. That's what you're saying. And I was playing with the VR, and there are some things you can, instructional things that have so much more possibility than what they're doing. And I'm really excited about the idea of walking around my electronics and things like that. But CastAR would let me have more of a real world heads up view that if I wanted to walk around the electronics of a board, I could, but I could also be holding the board.
Exactly. That's the kind of experiences we're going for. And we think those will be more compelling in the long run. Definitely more approachable. Oftentimes I use my father as a metric of, are we getting the product right? Because he's a smart guy, but he's not, technical as far as computers. And it's like, in the past, when I was a kid, I tried to get my father to play video games, and he was completely confused by the decoupling of a joystick and the computer screen or the game screen across the room. He just couldn't get past it. But I think about, like, could my father work a game of Risk with the grandkids, for instance? And yeah, I think, if we had physical pawns that you could move in there, like the grandkids could say, Dad, take the toy dragon and put it where you want it, and it'll burn the village down. That's something that he could understand because it's very direct. You just interact directly with the experience. VR is heading in that direction, but it's incomplete, and I don't think that it's going to be something like my father and many other people out there would ever do. It'd just be too alien to him. But mixed reality, as we get comfortable, as the world gets comfortable with mixed reality, like CastAR, we think we have the perfect entry point for that. Like one of our sayings is, if you can open a game board, you can play with our system. We want it to be that easy. Open the game board, hit the power button, reach into the experience, and directly interact with it. As people mature and they understand it a bit more, then all these other types of displays, like the HoloLens with near-eye display, will become more interesting for the mass market, where you can bring it off the table and you can start doing bigger experiences. And as you project into the future, just like I said, these other holographic displays that don't have eyewear, those will be very interesting and very key part of our everyday life. But the mixed reality glasses will get so good that they can do everything VR does, plus all of the mixed reality stuff that, society's become accustomed to. It's just like the early days of computers. It just took a lot of baby steps to get it to where everyone now knows how to use an iPad. And
the HoloLens is the very expensive Microsoft mixed project, right?
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. So it uses this near-eye display to put the image right into your eye, and then it tracks the entire room. So you can have stuff like hanging off the ceiling or popping up out of the floor. But, it's pretty crude right now. It's going to take quite a few years for that kind of technology to be ready for mass market. I think It retails for $3,000 right now, and it only has like this really tiny, narrow field of view. But like every time I've tried it, it's definitely heading in the right direction. It's too bad we're going to get there first.
I know that when we saw your demo many months ago, maybe a year ago at this point, there were lots of games, which I expected, but there were at least one sciencey thing to look at. Are you still pursuing other forms of visualizing? Yeah. Engineering and science.
Absolutely. Yes. So we're just building the tool for other people to make interesting content. So our main focus, what we're driving towards our platform is games and entertainment. But just like you saw with Oculus, now it's been shipping for a while. There's lots of other vertical markets that are using the device. And, from a business perspective, this is all the stuff that, like Andy Rubin and all the folks at Playground have been helping us understand. It's like, you've got to focus, and then the other verticals will come for free. And so that's our strategy. It's like, where will we get the most adoption? And if we went after enterprise or something very niche-y like that, we could probably sell the headset for $2,000 and we could sell tens of thousands of them. But it'd be very hard or difficult for us to go into mass market if we have that mindset. Because once you head down that path, it's hard to, erode your business unit that's selling $10,000 headsets, for a $299 headset or something like that.
And yet it's got to be so tempting. I mean, because you could get to one of those headsets faster. I mean, you could do something to augment surgery or teach people how to fix, I don't know, cars or electronics or anything that requires you to have detailed manuals alongside physical objects.
But that still can happen.
It will, but...
Well, you actually, you look through the marketplace now. You've got Epson that's doing enterprise. They have some headset that's kind of like HoloLens, but it's, they're trying to sell them to Boeing and places to look at stress in the wings of the airplane and stuff like that. And you've got Meta, who's squarely focused on enterprise, and it changes your decisions as you're creating the product. If you're selling a $10,000 or $1,000 headset or whatever, you can throw a $50 chip in there without blinking at it. If you're going for something that's going to be impulse buy, like what we're doing, you have to sit there and do a lot more engineering. Like, we're just doing tons of engineering so we can drive the price way down. It would just be easier for us it would be dangerous for us, right? We would throw really expensive components in there and get it done, and then we wouldn't have a path to get to mass market.
I think a lot of people lose sight of the fact that a great deal of engineering is driving cost and power out of things. Those are the hard, the two big hard problems besides inventing an idea. And I think people forget that. Absolutely.
And your engineers have to be mindful of that from day one. And that's the stuff that we work with our engineers to, challenge them. Like we do, frequent bill of material reviews. Like, here's $1 sitting there on this particular component. Have you really looked for something that's 10 cents? Or are you just trying to, get the prototype out? Just let us know, so we can keep an eye on it if we need to throw more work at it. And that's the balancing act that we do on a daily basis. It's like some things are prototype and we understand that we're throwing a lot of money at it, and other things are going to stick around until production. So let's try to do the cost reduction stuff early.
If I wanted to program a game for CastAR, what language should I be learning? Is Unity a good platform?
Unity's great. So Unity and Unreal. So we support both of those. both of them are almost push the button and go type experiences. You just drop our plugin into the experience and you set some scaling values, like how big the game's going to be on the table, and you can get up and going within seconds. In Unity, I believe it's C# and a couple of other kind of higher level languages. If you're a hardcore programmer, then Unreal is the one for you. But even this goes to show how easy it is. If I can get a game going on our system with Unity, it's pretty amazing. It's drag and drop these days to make games. Like, you just drag assets in, you buy them from their asset store, attach sounds to them, and just hit the play button, and it shows up on the glasses.
Wow. When can I try that for myself?
You can download. I think you can download. At least you can download Unity for free. I think Unreal has a free-ish version.
No, I have Unity. We started taking a class. That was the disguised question of when are you planning to ship? You mentioned 2017 Christmas, but are you doing developer glasses? Are you doing early adopters?
Yeah, so folks are using our Kickstarter glasses now, but they're not a great proxy for what the new glasses are. We've added a bunch of features. So towards the end of the summer, we're going to be sampling some of the new glasses, but it's be to very select developers, like key developers, because it has lots of warts. And then we have a couple more builds of glasses as we sand off the rough edges and warts, and then they'll become more and more available. I mean, for us, it's important that we have a pipeline completely full before the day we launch of content, not only the content that's going to be on the actual unit itself, but content that you can go download and put onto the unit. Because, again, we're trying to craft everything to get people coming back to our system on a daily basis, so it doesn't become like the Vive where you just throw it on the shelf and only come back every couple weeks. Maybe if you see a news story or something. Getting people engaged every single day, having new content in the pipeline, so there's always something new and exciting. So that's going to be one of our big challenges, is coordinating all of that. And we're actually putting a lot of staff and personnel around developer relations. So actually, if you asked who we're looking for, we're desperately looking for more developer relations folks to get up to speed for when these units go out. Because we want our developers to feel like rock stars. And so, we want to treat them really well. And it's going to take a lot of people on our side to do that.
What is a developer relation person? What would their skill set be? Would they be game developers, or would they be community managers?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of all of that. So there's going to be technical developer relations positions that we'll need to fill out. More of...
it's like an FAE sort of help them with your technical information?
So technical. So
okay.
It's someone that knows about games, knows about programming, we can parachute them in. Hopefully all these people like to travel, because they may have to travel and parachute in, help developers when they get stuck. And then we need some evangelists too. So the people that are your best buds, they're not necessarily technical, but they'll, stop by the studio and bring you a muffin basket or something to keep you loving CastAR, and then finding out if there's anything blocking, and then they'll help, dispatch the more technical people. And then we're a little low on folks to do web outreach type stuff. So we're kind of looking around for some folks in that area. It's going to be a big, it's going to be a big program and a big operation around that.
Yeah, most device companies and manufacturers and engineers don't have to think about two different kinds of customers, where the people we sell to and then the people who make things for the people we sell to. That is a huge multiplier in complexity.
It's the curse of being a platform.
Yeah. And having an SDK and maintaining it. I mean, that's a whole other company.
You brought up a great point that I think is pretty interesting. You hit on one of the key things that we're focusing on really heavily right now is the inconsistency between the user experience from one game to another. And so part of this developer relations team is taking our TCR's technical code requirement documents and guidelines and helping the developer follow those, because it's really important on a platform that the user has a consistent experience. So when you enter or exit a game, that it's the same every single time. Like, it's kind of surprising that the Vive has this problem right now, because at Valve, that was one of the things that they were beating into my head is consistency. Like, if you're going to do a microtransaction, the store access should always be the same, or when you leave a game, it should always exit approximately the same. You kind of see it across the board. It's kind of strange. Like, even the Xbox One is half the time I get lost trying to exit a game, and it doesn't have to be that way if you help your developers, follow some of these guidelines.
Yeah, but it's a lot of guidelines, and
that's a lot of enforcement.
It's a lot of enforcement, and sometimes you end up in two games and they handled the same problem differently, but there probably was no standard way to handle it. It was just whichever game I played first, the other one was wrong, sort of problem. But
I think the VR guys have a bigger challenge with that, because again, the interaction models haven't been defined yet.
Yeah.
So, for us, one of the important things is we're a game board type experience. So we have a target. The game developer targets, unless they want to make their own game board, but basically you target this game board, and it's a much easier task than trying to figure out how to make a user experience where you can walk anywhere in the room. And I think back to my assertions that the mass market needs some baby steps to acclimate to these type of experiences. I think, with CastAR, if we knock it out of the park, we're going to define a lot of those experiences, and they're going to be centered around the table and centered around social interactions. And then when other technology comes along, like the near eye glasses, where you can just start putting experiences everywhere, I think those are going to translate and be a nice springboard for a nice familiar springboard for the end consumer.
Cool. Well, I think I have just one more. Well, I say it's one question, but it's probably 6. You have mentioned Andy Rubin and Playground, which is a sort of a VC, sort of an incubator, sort of a consulting firm. Could you tell us about that and how you got involved with them?
Oh, absolutely. So when we were raising money, we were doing the Sand Hill Road circuit, which is where all the VCs are in Silicon Valley. We had some corporate money, a syndicate of some corporate money that wanted to put money into us, and we had some money out of New York. So there was these 3 different groups that had different strings attached to them. So Sand Hill Road money, is the most traditional and most straightforward and most well-known in the Bay Area. Some of this hedge fund money that we were looking at from New York was really cool, but it was super hands-off. And then some of the corporate money that had all kinds of strings attached, you need to use our chip if you're going to take our money, which we didn't want anything to do with. And so we were getting close to making our decision on which of the Sandhill or the hedge fund money we were going to go with. And then out of the blue, Andy Rubin kind of parachuted in, and he's like, here's this deal. This is what we're doing. It's different. We've identified why most hardware startups fail, and we want to fix that. And most hardware startups, and I've actually experienced this working at various venture-funded companies as an engineer, but I got to see it, is you take your first big chunk of money and you've, much like the Kickstarter, right? You have to make big, bold plans to use that money. And sometimes it doesn't work out. And so what happens is you get this lump of money and you start to quickly feel this pressure that you got to get going, you got to start hiring, and then inevitably something's going to go kind of wrong. So now the temptation of the executive team is to kind of shield that from the VCs. And so then there's this like bidirectional pressure coming, the executives are like pressing on the engineers to get their together and, fix this problem. And then they're trying to push back with the VCs to keep them away and hide the fact that things aren't going well. And it's kind of dysfunctional. And so what Andy recognized is like, what if we make a more intimate kind of relationship and also add resources to the money that comes along for free with it? And so basically what you get is for us, the deal was we got the same amount of money, the same dilution. We gave up the same amount of the company, and we got engineering resources. So his studio has mechanical engineers, software engineers, industrial designers, business guidance, manufacturing experts. And you get to use as much of that as you want. So what that did was it allowed us to focus on hiring more smartly and not, rushing out and making bad decisions on hiring or spending money on like stupid things to try to accelerate the process. And also this more intimate working relationships, we get free rent, we get some free food, we have a free prototyping service. We're intimately working with all the partners at Playground. And so when things go sideways, they're just there. They're going to see it. So there's no reason to try to hide it or try to put pressure on the engineers to, pull a miracle to fix the problem. You're more tempted to go over and say, hey, Andy, we kind of messed up. This chip vendor's not working with us, and they're not going to give us this chip. And then it gives them some opportunity to try to help fix things. I mean, that's an actual scenario that happened. It's like we had a chip vendor that didn't want to work with us, and he said something like, God damn it, I sold 200 million of those chips when I was at Android. Let me get on the phone. And we got immediate reaction out of them. So it's been a really amazing relationship, quite different than other VCs.
That sounds very different than most VCs. Well, and Andy has an amazing wealth of experience. He did Danger, which did the Sidekick phone, which I loved.
Oh, I love that phone too.
And then he did Android. And I mean, it's like not like he was part of the Android team. No, he was very much in charge of Android.
It's so funny. So the entire group of Playgrounds made up, the partners all are entrepreneurs. So they know exactly what we've been through, and they've been through different entrepreneurial challenges. So there's always when there's a problem, there's always someone there that's been through something similar. And the interactions are kind of interesting between the different partners. Like Andy Rubin, he's kind of like the guy that comes in and drops the grenade in the middle of the room and challenges us to think a little bit differently. And it blows up and we're like, oh, that was pretty smart. Yeah, gosh, he really has some insight about whatever, go to market or this or that. And he just drops the grenade and turns around and walks out. Some of the other partners are more intimately involved. So, they're actively trying to help us find the right executive team or the right marketing people. And, I can go on and on. I don't want to bore everyone with it, but it's quite different. It's pretty awesome. And it's different than an incubator. Some people might say well, why is it different than Y Combinator? So Andy Rubin's thesis is he wants to invest in companies that are going to change the world, like big platform plays. And so they're making pretty big investments. So unlike a smaller group like Y Combinator that sprinkles like a few $100,000 here and there, and they hope for 1 out of 50 to make it big, like Andy looks at more mature startups that actually are, mission to touch, hundreds of millions of people's lives. And so that's what their focus is. And so the resources that he provide are, I would say, a little bit higher quality than a small incubator.
That sounds really, really cool. All right. We have kept you for long enough for your weekend, and I know that you do work a lot. Chris, do you have any last questions?
No, we should let her go.
Jeri?
I'm sorry if I was so rambly today.
No.
I felt like I was all over the board.
I know this is great. I wanted to hear about all the different things. Actually, I want to hear about cars, but that is separate. We should get back to our weekend.
I'd love to come on and talk about cars sometime.
Well, in the meantime, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
No, not really. Actually, I feel pretty good. I had a great time. I hope there's some little nuggets in there that folks that are out interviewing or folks that are putting together, interview panels can use.
Yeah,
but
I think so.
It's been a joy.
Well, thank you. It has been a joy. We are quite thrilled to have you.
All right. Thank you very much.
My guest has been Jeri Ellsworth, president of CastAR and an amazing electrical engineer. I'd also like to thank Christopher White for producing and co-hosting, and of course, thank you for listening. T-shirts are coming really soon, so check that embedded.fm website for a link. You can hit contact there if you'd like to say hello, or I may have some availability starting in August. So if you've got something that you want help with, we should talk. And you can send me email off of show@embedded.fm, info@logical-elegance, or hit the contact link at either one of those. Now, a final thought from Philip K. Dick. Reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away. Embedded FM is an independently produced radio show that focuses on the many aspects of engineering. It is a production of Logical Elegance, an embedded software consulting company in California. If there are advertisements in the show, we did not put them there and do not receive any revenue from them. At this time, our sole sponsor remains Logical Elegance.